This is the 217 Recovery Podcast with Corey Winfield.
I'm kind of on the outs with Little People of America. So I tried getting on a dating site once, and they would not let me on there because I am not a little person.
And co-host Marnie Winfield.
You're tapering yourself down from your hangover or whatever. Oh no, when that started rolling into a whole another entire day of drinking, it just didn't stop.
It is the 28th of October, 2021. My name is Corey Winfield, and Marnie is still resting. She's got back issues, but I have a very special guest with me today. Well, not really with me. Well, sort of. He's on the computer, and we're actually recording this as well, but my friend James Deere. James, how are you?
Good, thank you, Corey. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and just to tell a quick story, man, it was over a year ago, I think, where you had sent me a message, and you were starting Break the Chain, which is your recovery group, I guess you could call. Are you guys a nonprofit now?
It's a complicated one. We was a non-profit in the UK, and I was supposed to be leaving New Zealand and going back there, but we decided to close that one down, and now we're working on opening one up over here in New Zealand. So actually, no, not exactly right now, but we are generally, yes.
Okay. And
working on that over here.
And I don't know over there if nonprofit means the same thing. I mean, here, obviously, nonprofits, you can make profit. It's just your board members don't get paid. So there's no inside incentive of oh, no, we can't do this. Even though people need it, we can't do that because we need to save money so I can get my bonus at the end of the year.
I don't exactly know how it works. I've not really looked into the logistics of that so much, but I know that I know in the UK, the actual company can't take any. It depends how you set up as a charity. A charity is pretty obvious what that is, and not for profit, limited by liability company. I know that basically you can't take any profit from that, even if you're the director of it. You can have. I mean, one of the differences is you can just be a single director rather than having board members, but you can't make any profit personally. It all goes back into the organization, and then when you close that down, you have to give away all the assets to another not-for-profit.
Yeah, it's kind of the same here, except the director is the only person who can get paid. If you have a resource director, executive director, those people can. The presidents can't, vice president, board members can't. But that's crazy, man. Seems like if not paying the directors, it seems like that could open the door for a lot of slippery fingers.
Well, you can take a wage, but you can't get. It's not going to be for profit. It's it's not something you're going to get rich out of. That's for sure.
Right. Well, that's cool, man. So you reached out to me though. As I said, I want to say it was over a year ago, and we kind of started talking a little bit. And I really dig what you're doing there, man. You were, I think, just getting started, and I remember you were nervous. You were like, "Man, I'm going to do these online meetings," and you're like, "I've never done them before," And I knew you were going to be great, man, because you have that authenticity about you. You and I, we do this because we love recovery. We were at a horrible spot in our life one time, and this is so much better. And then knowing that we're talking about it and we're open about it, and that helps other people be open about it and talk about it. And I saw that in you, and I could hear it in your voice, and I just thought, man, you're gonna do just fine. And how have the meetings been going?
The meetings were wonderful. I'd been doing things before that, sharing videos online and doing kind of little mini vlogs, I guess, video log type things. And then I obviously started doing the podcast, my own podcast, and just generally sharing as many things and doing peer support and whatever. And then I think it was when I actually started doing the meetings when it kind of more of a sense of community came together, and you get your regulars coming along. People really appreciate that. That more intimate group setting, and it was absolutely magical, to be honest. I've had to stop doing them now because I started uni studying as a counsellor, which is going to be something that's going to help in the long run with everything, and it was part of the way that I was staying over here in New Zealand. So yeah, I guess time-wise, things with Break the Chain slowed down a little bit, and I've kind of reined everything in back to podcast. Still trying to put work on the platform that we've been trying to build for a year and a half, which is not as easy as I'd like it to be, and peer support, and that's pretty much all that I'm doing at the moment, whilst I, focus on getting the degree done, because obviously that's going to be worth it in the long run. And, before I actually started doing a counselling degree, I guess I felt like I knew quite a lot about helping people. And then when I've learned that possibly I didn't know that much. And there was a lot of things that I had to learn. Yeah, so that's been a really, really cool thing.
It's always good to learn and to realize some of the, not mistakes you're making, but some of the easier ways that you can kind of bridge the gap between, the whole flow of things. And you and I both know we can't make people get sober. We can't do it for them, but just being there and support. And your phone probably rings all the time. Mine does with people, friends. I mean, just, hey, I need help. I need this. I need that. Just sometimes they just want an ear. And it's really hard. I'm also going back to school and it's full time. And, the whole COVID thing really opened up online, which made it a lot easier because I don't have to go to a class. I can just sit at a computer when I get time. But it's still, man, it's time crunch. And then throw a wife in there and she wants your time and attention. And it's just like, it gets overwhelming sometimes. So I think it's cool that you realize that and you're like, whoa, I gotta take a break from something and just focus on the podcast when I can do the podcast and just make that is the best that I can make it without trying to be overstretched, because I got into that problem as well, where I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that, I want to do that, I want to make a movie. And I had 50,000 things going on when I was barely even paying attention to a little bit of it, and it just doesn't make anything good. So then I kind of tried to hone it back in, and it's crazy because we want to do it all, but we know we can't. But at the same time, it's difficult, man. It really is. And I'm glad that you kind of recognize that. That's pretty awesome that you're going back to school though to be a counselor. I don't know if you've felt or heard from people. I don't know if you've ever worked at a treatment center, but I have. And the way people come up to me knowing that I'm in recovery and that I went to rehab 15 times and that, my liver is shut down and so do my kidneys, alcohol's horrible, but they know that and they know my story. And so when they come up to me, it's like we're on equal terms. I'm not above them. They're not above, we're just equal, with people who are looking for a way to maintain sobriety and live a fun life in recovery. And some of the other counselors weren't in recovery. And sometimes they would feel a little bitter about it because they would say, well, why is he going to you? He should be coming to me. I took a class on that. It's like, I don't know. I lived it, and
yeah.
And not that I try to say stuff like that, throw in their face. I'm just saying, but that's the kind of attitude, I would kind of get from the other counselors. And I kind of felt like they didn't like me either because I was just helping this guy out, and it was kind of...
As an addict, like if someone, the first question that you have is like, have you been an addict? It's something that you want to know, because how else can someone relate to the fact that you couldn't possibly say no to drinking at 7 a.m. or sniffing horse tranquilizer at, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday mornings just to be able to deal with work? And why could you, why can't you stop when it's shutting your kidneys down and you're still using it? It's like, that's insanity, and I think it certainly, I'm not to say that it's impossible. I'm sure that, one of the things with things like CBT is that it's evidence-based, and they've found that if you do this and this, it will work and it will help. And there are ways through, not to say that, every path's different when it comes to recovery. It's total madness. It's chaos, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Finding a way through. But certainly, I wanted to know that someone knew how I felt and could understand my personal insanity. Yeah.
It definitely helps, because I don't know if what was your drug of choice?
Ketamine.
Okay. Obviously mine was alcohol, but I remember one time I was at my mom's house and I was in her bathroom and I saw it was mouthwash and it said it had alcohol in it. And I thought, I can drink this. It's not cheating. It's absolutely cheating, and it's absolutely gross. And my stomach hurt so bad. I just chugged it, and just to think about it now is going to make me kind of. But so, like trying to sneak your way through it I thought would work for a minute. And there's this new, I guess it's a synthetic ecstasy, or not ecstasy, but Xanax. And it's like liquid fertilizer or something, but people are like taking it and it's poison. And, just that whole, I think I'm beating it. Meanwhile, they're like uncontrollably shaking, sweating. Nobody can figure out what's wrong with them because they're not, testing positive on drug tests, and it's just like, well, what's going on? And then they're just trying to hide it, meanwhile, they're dying. And I don't know if that's a big thing over in New Zealand, but man, like, why would you think that's a good idea? Again, why would I think drinking mouthwash was a good idea? I'm an addict.
So this is people who are trying to get off Xanax are using some kind of fertilizer as it's been labeled like synthetic Xanax. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Right.
And they can get it online.
I know that when there was droughts of ketamine, like there was all these different synthetic things. There was like MXE and one called like Flying Lotus that came in a little blue bottle that were God knows what it was. And we was doing all of these things and they made you feel pranged out, man. It was God knows what, I feel lucky to have survived just doing, sniffing bags of white powder off the floor that you didn't recognize the taste of. And I feel very lucky to have found my way through doing all that sort of crap. And, the mouthwash thing, I used to use it as a chaser sometimes if there was nothing else, just so I could drink things straight. And it's nasty. Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad, and it's crazy that we were at that point in our life where that's stuff that we actually did. So when I hear about these other people doing that, I don't think they're crazy. I just think, and I don't think they're sick. I just think that they need to somehow come to terms with they just can't use drugs anymore. Synthetic, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, they just can't. When I came to that realization and I accepted it, which I don't remember when that was. I went to sober living after my last time in treatment. And I think somewhere in there was when I finally got okay with, all right, I can never drink again. I can't smoke pot, can't do coke, acid, nothing. I have to walk away from it all. And I think that's when I really started feeling like I was living life. And I had a part-time job. It was all right. It was fun. It wasn't going to pay the bills really, but it was something. And I knew that wasn't going to be my career, but it was something to get me through that. And I really started having fun sober and actually living life. So I think that really had something to do with it. But you can't put that purpose in someone's life, unfortunately.
It's amazing to get a taste of it. I was actually talking about this with a friend earlier, and it's, by any means possible, all drug addicts or addicts are so resourceful. If you want to pull $1,000 out your arse so you can buy or pay off a debt, or you need money, you can get it if it's for drugs or to use or whatever it might be, gamble, anything. So if you could pull all of your resource ability out and just find a way to get a week or 2 weeks away, if an auntie or a grandma or a sister or a cousin or whatever, just so you can go somewhere and even if you have to get away for a week or 2 weeks, take a little bit of time off work, whatever you got to do to just get that clarity. And it's harder with some things like alcohol. It's harder to get a break from it because it's fucking everywhere, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But if you can do that and get a bit of clarity, and it gives you something to compare to, so that when you go back into it again, you're like, I know what it's like to be sober, because I know that when I was in the thick of it, I didn't even remember what it was like to be sober anymore. I didn't have any sober memories. I didn't have any, everything I thought about was raves, techno, drugs. Like, it was just like the whole thing. I was just so immersed in this thing that I didn't know anything other than that. Everyone I knew did that, and it was like normal. It was everyday life. So yeah, it was really good to get to get some perspective on that by getting sober and enjoying myself again. So it's like, no, actually, I don't want to be, off balance at all times, not be able to use a calculator and do maths, not be able to problem solve, not be, all these cognitive abilities. Like I just couldn't do anything. I could kind of wobble around and laugh and dance in front of some speakers, and I had a few abilities, but like my functions were pretty limited. And to get all your functions back and be able to think and get those things back, and then you kind of know what you're losing again. And another thing I was thinking about, in the beginning, to get sober, it's kind of like that decision to get sober is a miracle. The decision to say never again, now that is just so far out. To go from being addicted to saying I'm never doing that again. And the thought of thinking about saying I will never use again is horrible. It's the most anxiety-fueled, disgusting thing to think about. Like, it's just like, I can still remember how I thought about, even 6 years after I stopped using, trying to say, right, I'm never going to do it again. Because I stopped using for so long before I said I quit. Because I couldn't do it. Even to think about it made me so anxious. And I was like, if you're going to get into recovery, start recovering before you quit. Just like, you don't have to say I'm not doing it anymore. Go see a counsellor, go see an addictions person, talk to someone that you know that's in recovery, and start feeling it out and start moving in that direction. Even if you stop using, you don't have to say never again until you say never again. And then when you actually say never again, that is an amazing feeling when you can actually have the courage to say, I'm never going to do that again. And especially, if you, like, I don't know, like me and you were the same. I had to quit everything. I had to quit alcohol and drugs and everything because I knew that one led to the other, and it always did, and put me on the path of a downward spiral. So, but when I did say no to them and found purpose in my life, like, life is absolutely incredible now. But I went through hell to get there, and I'm sure you did as well.
Mm-hmm. And now it comes to a point where if somebody offered me alcohol, I would say, no, man. Why would I want to be miserable? I was like, you know what that's going to do to my life? No, man. Like, it's just not worth it. And I think when you hit that point is when you can look back and say, nah, I'm never doing that again. Because I feel like I'm lucky to have made it out, and I think you're the same, talking about can't even use a calculator and just basic functions. And I'm lucky, and I don't want to go back through that. And I've been told it's easier to stay sober than it is to get clean, which I believe is true, not at first. And like you said earlier too, with people, just get a couple weeks, just go through the process. It is a process. And I've heard people, I just quit. Well, good for you. And sometimes I'll question them. I'm like, man, were you really a drunk? Or are you just coming to AA meetings because you're trying to get away from your wife? But the process, it's different for everyone. Some of us are stubborn. Some of us are like, no, I can still do it. In 5 years, I'll be able to drink again. No, I won't. And I saw a guy when COVID first started. He came in and he went to one meeting a week, one AA meeting a week, and he was probably 72, and he had 20 years clean. But since that one meeting closed down, he didn't really know how to use a computer, so he didn't really attempt any Zoom meetings. And just that one meeting led him right back to drinking, just missing that one meeting. And that's what really hit home for me too. It's like, man, it doesn't matter if it's 5 years, 3 years, 20 years, I can just never drink again. And being cool with that, like I said earlier, is really key. At least it was for me. But it's a process, and don't expect to get it right the first time. A guy I had on a month or so ago said something that kind of opened my eyes a little bit. I've heard people say, relapse is part of recovery. And he said, no, relapse is part of addiction. Like, sober is part of recovery. And I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like, everybody, we're all going for that same goal, but a lot of people try to lessen it or dampen it. And a relapse, it sucks. It's a relapse. You feel like shit. You feel like, oh, you let everybody down again. And, oh, why couldn't I do it? Like you mentioned earlier, like, why can't I just stop this? And why am I doing this again at 7 a.m? I don't really want to, but damn it, I need to get through the day. It's awesome being sober, though. I'll tell you that.
Relapse is, it's so common. And when you get sober, and if you've made the decision, like, right, I'm actually going to stop using, and you go through the process of stopping using, and you haven't used for 7 days straight, and you've made it through a weekend, that is a miracle. It's unbelievable to get that opportunity to be able to experience that. And then when you get, and then you stay sober for a while or whatever, how long, and then to use again. And if you use a little bit, the chances are highly likely that you're going to slip straight back to the bottom of that hole and pick up where you left off from within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. That's what it takes. It takes around 2 to 3 weeks before you will be exactly where you left off before you had all your period of sobriety, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 50 years, it doesn't matter what it is, you would just fall straight back to where you left off, because that's just where that's kind of your baseline. That's the addiction always gets deeper and deeper and deeper into the hole. And you know, if you think about using again, you need to be so aware of what the cost of doing that is, of just having one drink or one line or whatever it might be, or the beer might lead to having a line of Coke down at the pub or whatever it is. And then you know, it's just, you can so easily throw everything away. And when you are next going to get given, if you're lucky enough to get that opportunity to get the willpower to just be like, okay, I'm actually going to stop using again now and get through the withdrawals and through the week and through that first weekend, man, you're lucky, because you might be going around the mill for another 3 years before you get that opportunity come around again, 5 years, or maybe that opportunity never comes around again. So if you've got into sobriety, you know, just cherish it, because it is such a gift.
Mm-hmm. And watch who you're around. Was it hard for you when you first got clean? And, you know, it's a process, and, you know, you probably went back out as well. But when you finally turned that corner, or maybe when you first started, was it weird to realize that you didn't know who you were or what you really liked?
Yeah, well, I get everything that I thought I liked and thought I was kind of implanted by society, friends, and all those things, and things I'd grown up around. And I loved drugs and alcohol so much, and raves and gigs and all that so much, that I couldn't stop. And there was no way I was going to stop, because I just liked doing it way too much. And I was so addicted to not just the drugs and stuff, but also the social aspect and the friends. And we had a really huge group of mates who would do this, and I'm sure it's the same if you go down the pub or whatever it might be. But I was totally into it, and there was so much more that I was attached to than just the drugs and the alcohol. And I was at a point where it's like my body was crapping out. Ketamine causes cystitis of the bladder. It can knacker your liver, your kidneys. It can give you the crazy cramps, stomach cramps from cup blocking bile ducts, which makes you feel like you're in childbirth. It's just nuts. And you have all these consequences. When I still couldn't stop, I was like, if I don't do something about this, I'm going to have some serious health problems. Like I already was manifesting serious health problems, but like the ones that you don't come back from, like many of my friends have, and some of my friends have had their bladder removed from doing this. It's fucking gnarly. And I was just like, right, I've got to get out of here. And I just did everything I could to, well, basically a friend had to help me, because I was addicted to anesthetic, so I wasn't much use to myself or anyone else. But a friend helped basically put me on an aeroplane and sent me to the other side of the world, to Australia. And then I kind of sat there, and I was just like, yeah, I kind of went through all my withdrawals and stuff then. And then I was just, I tried to drink myself to death and realized that was never going to do what ketamine did. And I just wanted ketamine so bad, and I couldn't get it there. I didn't know anyone. And nor did I want to, fortunately, to really pursue drugs at that particular time. But I had no memories that weren't to do with drugs, so it was really hard, because my mind was just constantly going over all those things. But I sat there, and I noticed over this course of the next 10 months that I was there, I changed what my hair looked like, I changed what I wore, I changed, things about me just started changing to more like things that I actually wanted to do, rather than what the things around me were telling me to do. And it's kind of like going through that process of being like, actually, all those things that I thought I liked were things that I was doing because I was trying to impress everybody that I was around. And, the realizations of all my, I became extremely anxious when I got sober. I didn't get into recovery. I didn't, I just ran away to survive, like you would run away from a tiger. I just ejected myself. And then it actually took me, that's why it took me 7 years to, and 2 mental breakdowns and panic attacks and severe anxiety and depression to actually get to the point where it's like, I actually needed recovery. and I found recovery through a yoga process, which taught me all the same things that the 12-step program did, basically. And then I gained this massive reverence for what the AA and NA was. I gained reverence for Christianity through my yoga process. I gained reverence for Islam and all these religious teachings, which I'd been anti-religious, and in the punk scene, who were, not, pretty much against all those things. And, I had this huge transformation of heart, basically. But it wasn't through the running away, but I had to run away to get sober and find out a little bit about who I was. And then I needed the yoga process as well to actually really find out who I was. It was like step one, step two for me.
Yes, you pretty much gradually started replacing the other stuff, and then you realize, I like this yoga stuff. I like this other stuff, and you start learning more about yourself, and that is a crazy process, man. Like you go so long just this one way, this one path. This is how it is. I thought everybody went home and drank a half gallon every night. I thought everybody did that because that's what I did. And I had this guy on last week, or maybe, I don't know what it was, a couple weeks ago, but he was telling me that the city, everybody uses meth, crystal meth, everybody. And I said, no, man. I was like, everybody there, uses crystal meth. I was like, I can guarantee you not everybody in that city uses crystal meth, but it's just the people that you know. And he kind of was like, yeah, you're probably right. But in those moments, those people that we know are from there. Everybody does it. People in Michigan, they say, oh, people in Kalamazoo, everybody's cooking meth. No, they're not. I know people that live there that don't cook meth. It's just the people that live there cook meth, and it's just one of those things where if you remove yourself or just move to Australia, to get yourself away from it, some people will say, oh, you're just running from your problem. You're just running from your problem. No, the problem's still there. As you said, you started to drink. I'll drink myself to death. And then you're like, that's not it. That's not even working. I don't even like that. And then you just kind of, I guess, succumb to, all right, let me just try this living thing. And it's just amazing how when you do find yourself and start enjoying just being sober and waking up, not feeling like hell, not chasing something all day long, having money in your pocket actually, and being worth a damn, going to a job and then saying, you did a really good job, man. We love having you here. And you're just like, what? I'm not coming in all hungover. And then I start with the regrets a little bit, like, man, how good could I have been on the radio? I could have been so much better, but then you have to stop yourself there because, as Back to the Future, the movie taught us. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Even if you go back in time, you can't change, and you can't change yourself. You got to avoid yourself. So, like, what the hell good's a time machine going to do? And we can't change our past. You just have to accept it. And I've done some things, said some things I'm not proud of. We all have, but we just have to kind of get over it. And that's where I think the acceptance part comes in. And I don't work the AA program. I tried for a little bit. And then I was telling a guy this at an AA meeting, and he's an older guy, and he's my friend. But he's like, well, Corey, this sounds to me like you're doing step one here, step two here. You just don't realize it. And I was like, I guess, man, whatever. I'm just telling you, I'm doing this, and I've been sober, and it's working, And he was kind of delighted to know that I was working the steps, but not knowing it. And it's just like, all right, man, whatever it takes, if it's AA, NA, if it's yoga, if it's sword fighting, as long as you're not like killing people, I think it's all right, man.
Well, yeah, my like when I actually read through the 12 steps, because, I'd already got into a really good place before I read them. And then when I read them, it's like, well, be honest. And I was like, well, yeah, I started doing that from reading a load of things. That was a hard one, even just to start, just to be honest, learning about humility, something that I'd come about naturally. Learning about amendments was like, yeah, well, I watched My Name is Earl when I was 16, thank God. And he taught me about karma. Earl taught me all about karma and don't be a dick because anything that you do happens back to you. And I started watching that when I was a kid. Like, I used to fight when I was younger. And I noticed that every time I would hit someone, like someone would just I'd randomly get hit back or something that happened. And I was like, it seems to be like every time I do, it's like almost like I'm punching myself in the face. And then, it just got worse and worse. I was like, right, I'm going to stop. And I stopped and all the violence stopped. Everything just stopped and it showed me. I watched that very carefully since then. And obviously when you don't do bad things, you don't have to live with guilt, because if you live with guilt, you'll never, ever be happy. Shame and guilt from doing crappy things. So do good things and then become serving and help other people. And ultimately it was when I started doing the helping other people that actually I got the strength to say I quit, because I realized that I had the ability to influence other people to get sober as well. And anybody who's using, if they get sober, has the power to change thousands of people's lives through their own example, even without doing anything other than just being sober and humble.
I don't know how it is in the UK or Australia or New Zealand, but here it seems like there's a lot of people just wanting to look the other way. Like, oh, it's not happening here, let's just keep it in the basement. Like, oh, my son John doesn't have a problem. Nope, he's just fine. Instead of being open and talking about it. And this is something that I really want my nephews, who are 10 and 6, I really want them to know it's okay. If you're at a high school party, you start drinking, and something bad happens, you can come talk to Uncle Corey about it. You can talk to your mom about it. Nobody's going to string you up by the neck or whatever and hang you from the barn, but if you need help, we can give that to you, and I wish it would be more open here. I don't know what it is there, if people are still kind of like, oh no, it doesn't happen here, or if they're more open about it.
Well, all of these places have a big drinking culture. My parents were kind of workaholics. They had no experience around these things. I guess if your parents have experience in that field, then they know about it, and if they haven't, then generally that they don't.
That's a good point.
It's hard to say. I know in England, like, there's a kind of like a real BBC, censored, surface layer of England where it's like, oh, these things don't happen and everything's proper and everyone's polite. And then every pub you go into has got Coke on the back of the toilet seat, and you grow up and you realise that everyone's parents do a bit of Coke here and there, and like England is just bonkers for how much drugs people use, and I imagine that the US is probably pretty similar as well, especially with the pharmaceutical stuff. I don't think the pharmaceutical stuff's quite as like party drugs are so cheap in the UK and so available, and it's kind of quite a small concentrated place. It's kind of all there. Over here in Australia and New Zealand, it's a lot of meth, because I know the cartels in Mexico target New Zealand and Australia because $1,000 of meth in Mexico is worth $250,000 in New Zealand. So it's quite like that it's getting out of hand. Like I did an assessment on it, and I was looking at the stats on it, and it's like I can't remember it exactly what it was, but it was just like from over the course from 2006 to 2017, it was just like from seizing I don't know, it was like nearly 1,000 times more meth since 2006. So yeah, it's getting out of hand here. I always look at some of the things that they've got going in the US though, and Canada as well, things like Xanax and is it fentanyl?
Yeah.
And I looked up fentanyl and it said 1,000 times stronger than morphine. 100 or 1,000? Don't quote me on that. But it was something absolutely. I was like, what the hell do you need that for?
Yeah, and
who made that?
And the people that are doing it, it's very easy to die, and they don't care. If you took an addict and said, hey, you want this pure heroin or you want this with fentanyl, they're going to grab the fentanyl. You'd be like, but if you shoot that up and too much, you're going to die. And they'd be like, yeah, okay. I mean, it's just they want that more, you know, like I guess that would be me going, hey, do I want this beer or do I want this 100 proof shot? You know, I'm like, well, give me the 100 proof shot. And yeah,
people will really go for the fentanyl over heroin.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And now they're putting it in meth as well. And people are shooting up meth. And it's crazy. And I don't know. It's something that I hope people can find their way out of it. I took a guy to treatment and he was really, really high on meth, and it kind of freaked me out because I hear him in my back seat and he's talking to himself, and he was saying, oh man, this guy's a cop. This guy's a cop. I should just stab him through the seat. And I'm like, bro, I was like, I can hear you talking to me. And he's like, oh, he's reading my brain. You know, he can hear my thoughts. He heard me. He knows I'm going to stab him. I'm like, bro, don't stab me. I was like, I don't know. And he jumped in my car so quick when I picked him up, he threw his bag in the back. And I'm like, I don't know what this dude has in his bag. But I'm like, I'm freaking out. And I still have 3 hours with this guy in the car, you know. So I'm like, hey, tell me about your family. You got a daughter, you got a kid, you know, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm not a cop. And I'm thinking, and I'm trying to speed to get this guy to the treatment center. And I'm thinking, man, if I get pulled over, I don't know how this is going to end. It's probably not going to end very well. But, you know, we got him there and it was good. But he had said something to me about going to a meth house. And he's like, man, going to a meth house is 10 times worse than going to a crack house. I've never been to a crack house or a meth house, but it got me to thinking. I was like, okay, over here, the police, they have this this little trailer that they pull with them. And inside the trailer, they have a bed. It's supposed to be like a kid's room. And in the kids' room, they have drugs hidden. And they want the parents and people to come through and like, find the drugs. I bet you can't. And I was like, no, they need to make a meth house, you know, have a baby laying on the floor, like 3 people passed out, and then start taking kids through there and go, this is what you're going to end up going to if you use meth. I think that would scare the hell out of some kids. And my wife strongly disagrees with me. She's like, no, we can't do that to them. But why not, man? If I saw that and I was 7 years old when the ex was like, hey, here, smoke this, and I smoked meth, I probably wouldn't have, you know, I'd have been like, nah, nope. I don't want anything to do with that. But not knowing too much about it, and I was already drunk at the time. So, hey, why not? And then I was up for 3 days and I was like, man, this is amazing. This is great stuff. I want more. Thank God I didn't know anybody who had more. And, you know, I called immediately to the treatment center and said, I need to come in there right now because this is bad. Because I knew my addictive personality and I knew I liked it. But, you know, meth is one of those drugs that I think someone should just never try. You know, it's just going to wreck you.
I was like the downers, so I never had to worry about the uppers. Uppers were like hell for me.
Yeah.
I always like to kind of turn things down, not turn them up.
Yeah. For the most,
but yeah, what it does to people. I mean, what meth does to people in the period of time it does it as well. Like, it's just got such a short shelf life on it. If people really go for it on meth, it's just like, you know, within a couple of years, you can really do some damage to yourself. And it's I always think of the Thomas the Tank meme. Have you seen the before and after one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't know who's making it. You don't know what they're putting in it. And a friend of mine got pulled over, and he claims that he used to run drugs from Mexico up to Chicago. And I don't know if he's telling the truth or not. You know, I don't know why he would say that. You know, it wasn't to impress me. He was just like, yeah, I got my toe cut off because of this. And I'm like, okay. But he went to treatment, got out, and then started going back to the same dealer. And I was like, man, you got to be careful. He's like, why? I was like, well, he knows that you're trying to get clean, but yet you're coming back to him. You know, he could think that you're trying to set him up, and he could give you some bad stuff that will make you either brain dead or just dead in general. You know, and he was just kind of like, oh, yeah, I never thought about that, you know, and people will do that. You know, I'm sure you've heard of hot shots. You know, people
haven't. I'm not familiar with people doing that sort of thing. In the UK, I doubt that's very common.
Well, a hot shot is
not where I'm from anyway.
It's kind of more typical with heroin, but they'll give you enough where they know it's going to kill you, and then they'll shoot you up with it, and then they'll leave. and you're dead. You overdosed. You can't tell on them.
Yeah.
You know, and it happens, you know, a lot. And, you know, it's just sometimes I guess people don't think, or I don't know, like same reason why I was in my mom's bathroom drinking the mouthwash, you know, some things just don't make sense. And, you know, that kind of goes par with the course, you know, with somebody who's in addiction. But
yeah, it's amazing how things just move from another level when you start using, you know, from the MDMA, ketamine, coke, all the party drugs, and then you move to crack, heroin, meth, you know, and it's just a whole nother scene which I've only ever been on the very edge of, you know, and I've only heard stories about, and not really so much. Fortunately, not had to see with my own eyes so much, but yeah.
So I got to ask you this though too about family, because my family is really important to me, and there was a few people in my family who didn't give up. Some did. They were just tired of it. When you moved from the UK to Australia, was that like your family saying, James, you got to get out of here, man, to save your life? Or
no, it wasn't. It was just myself. My family that don't have that kind of enterprise in them. You know, they're business people, but they've never. You know, that's all they've done, business. That, you know, the whole family's very local. You know, that wouldn't be something that they would think of. And you know, in family, this is a problem for families. They think if you go somewhere else, why are you not just going to do that somewhere else where they can't see you? You know, and they want to look after you, and they're like, well, if you go away from here, you could be like this just somewhere else, and we can't look after you at all. So it's you know, no, I just put myself on an aeroplane with the help of my friend. Yeah, and just scraped the barrel basically for many years. So, you know, all my family are over the other side of the world, but they'd rather me be here sober than me go back there. And, you know, I know I could go back there now and be sober, but at the end of the day, I don't want to be there anymore. I want to visit my family, but, you know, I've made a life here, very, very happy with everything. And to be honest, if I'm just around it all the time, it is a layer of anxiety that I'm sure I'd get used to it. But you know, I actually haven't been back there at all in 4 years, maybe 4.5 years now. So I actually still have to go back to where I'm from and face all of that stuff. But I know that my friends aren't going to be offering me drugs anymore because they know that I've, you know, made my whole life about recovery. I run a recovery company, and if they see me, it'll stress them out if they're using, because they're just going to be thinking about the fact that they're shit for using, being addicted basically, which I won't be thinking about. I'll, you know, totally. I started doing what I'm doing too, because I went away and got sober, and I just felt so bad for everybody still being stuck in that situation. So I was like, what can I do to start helping people pull themselves out of it? But they're not likely to come near me for a chat probably, because I probably feel real shit, you know. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting with the older friends, like some of mine. Well, I don't really, I mean, I know a lot of people, but like real close friends that I grew up with, you know, I just have a handful, and they're happy. You know, they're happy to see me sober, and we don't talk as much as we used to, but at the same time, you know, I have to live my life. They have to live theirs, you know, and the family though, I kind of felt a little bit, I don't even know what the word, I'm definitely grateful, but tears of joy, I guess, once I got sober. And you know, I talked to my mom, and I asked her to be a board member, you know, for 217 Recovery. And I just started bawling, man. Like I could not hold it together. I was just like, my stepdad comes back to the table. We were at a Mexican restaurant, and he's looking like, what just happened? You're like, we were having a good time. Like, why is everybody crying? You know, I'm just like, oh no. It's just because she had been there, and my mom, you know, didn't give up on me. She'd been there, you know, and it meant so much. And I did not see that one coming. And today I was driving home after dropping somebody off a treatment, and my father and I we spoke for the first time, you know, a month or two ago, but that's the first time we spoke in like 3.5, 4 years. So he's actually coming to the state where I live My stepbrother passed away, unfortunately, and they're coming, and it's going to be the first time I've seen them. And so I'm driving home today, and I'm starting to think about it. And I just start bawling, man. I'm just driving down the road, just bawling, and I can't stop it. I had that quiver cheek going, it's like, you just can't stop it. And I thought, man, this is going to suck. Like, I'm going to see my dad for the first time in years, and I'm just going to just lose it. And there's nothing I can do about it, James. I don't know if you ever had the tears of joy hit you, but
oh yeah,
it feels good, but at the same time, it's like, I don't want to be crying right now. It's crazy.
I don't cry because I'm sad ever, really, but I cry all the time because I'm happy.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's a good look or not, but I just like seeing people happy. Yeah.
So Break the Chain, that's a podcast. How often do you do it?
I try and put out one every second week. I've
Okay.
pretty much managed to keep that consistent since I started, and and as I said earlier, that's all I'm trying to really focus on at the moment. Keeping the podcast going, sharing clips and information through our social media, trying to keep working towards getting our online platform finished, which is going to be something special, I believe, when we finally get there. But that's had some many complications. And just peer support, and I'm always happy to talk to anyone who, wants help with recovery. If you message me, I will go to the ends of the earth to see people get sober, because I know what it's like, and what it's like to get sober as well. And if I can assist anybody with getting through that, especially that initial part, always happy to assist if possible.
And I think you sent me a link to that platform, and I'm sorry, I apologize. And I would say I was lazy, but it's, how it's time takes you over, and next thing you know, it's 2-3 weeks, months later, and you're like, oh, damn. But that's what you're talking about, right? As far as getting the...
That's it, yeah. We had to, because we didn't have any money, just getting people to kind of work on it for free, and then people who are working for free, there's only so much that they're willing to do unless they're phenomenal human beings, which they are for doing it in the first place. But, actually most of them had mental health problems or complications or addiction problems. And they got to a certain point and then dropped out. And then at the moment, someone got quite far along and then had some complications in their life and stopped communicating altogether. So we're just trying to figure out how to get all the work that they've done at the moment. It's a nightmare, but one day we'll have that finished, and I'm really looking forward to putting that out there, because it'll be a comprehensive platform where people can come to find help for all kinds of problems and entertainment, and just a kind of a edgy and cool place to hang out that doesn't seem like it's your traditional recovery thing. It's going to involve music and extreme sports and just people doing cool stuff. And I don't know, it's exciting, but who knows, hopefully in the next year that'll be done.
Good. The podcast is on pretty much everything, right? Google, Apple.
Yeah, if people search Break the Chain podcast and look for that logo, if you can see it, if you're on the audio, it just says Break the Chain in black and white writing. It's also on YouTube. If you type in Break the Chain and look for channels, it should come up. I think it's just Break the Chain. Should be. But anyway, we can stick a link. We can stick a link in the thing. I think one of the easiest ways to find our stuff is if you go onto Instagram and type in @BreakTheChain World Mission. Go on there, and then we've got a link that goes to all of our stuff on there. So yeah,
you guys are worldwide, man. And I love the guests you have on. Sometimes I watch them, and I'm just like, man, you take it. Well, you don't take it more serious, but. Like, I don't know. We've done so many podcasts. I just sometimes go off into left field when I'm talking about something that doesn't even make sense. Again, my wife corrects me on that, but you take it serious, and you have really good guests on, man. I really do dig that. And, if you're putting one out every 2 weeks, focus on that, make it the best you can. And, people will really appreciate that. And I'll actually put a link to Break the Chain on our main page of our website and our app too.
That's really kind of you, mate. Thank you.
People want to check you out, because we need to support each other. It's like friends, and we've been chatting for a while, and I think people would dig what you're doing. And if one person just catches on, is like, man, I really like what James is doing. You know, Corey's talking about midgets or I'm sorry, little people. And James, I mean, they're serious. You know, he's talking to this woman, this guy, you know, this is crazy. This is great, you know, or maybe they like us both. But I'll definitely put a link up, man, and, you know, direct people.
You've got a certain style, and it can tell that you was a radio host because, you know, you've got a talent and a skill where you can just talk and, as I say, you know, like, we agreed you would host this because, you know, you can freestyle, and I always write really, really pithy, concise questions that, you know, and it's kind of almost like, because I know what kind of information I want to extract out of a person for people, and I always go through and I always do it, which is, I'm surprised I do that because I'm a loose unit most of the time, but with that, I really do a lot of research. But yeah, no, it's a completely different style, and like I could, you know, if someone's driving along in a car, you know, I could just imagine them cruising along, listening to you talking. You know, it's a totally different thing. Also, I deal with different things as well. I usually deal with people who, you know, I don't so much deal with people who are in recovery as much as I do with people who aren't in recovery yet. You know, I always try and think it's hard. It's a hard thing to deal with. Like, how am I going to give something to people where, you know, because it's hard when you haven't got into recovery yet, isn't it? Everything's kind of like, it can take everything so personally, and people can come across as judgmental and stuff like that. So trying to, plant seeds and water them over time.
It's hard, man.
And it's hard to grow my audience as well because people don't like people. You know, people who haven't got into recovery yet actually like find probably the information repulsive.
Mm-hmm. They do.
They probably hear it and they're like, "Fuck this guy." But you know, I just hope that over, you know, 2 or 5 years, that if you plant those seeds and water them, one day they're going to go, "All right, I want to quit." And actually, now I know how to do it because I've been hearing these little clips from James for ages, and yeah.
Yeah, and they'll know where to turn, you know, when they do. And that is a tough audience. I remember my mom would, "Oh, Corey, look at this video." I don't need to look at that video. That dude's crackhead, you know, like, "Oh, that dude's a real alcoholic," you know. Meanwhile, I just got out of the hospital, about died, and I don't need therapy. What is this? This is stupid. I didn't want to listen to it, you know. And so we base our podcast kind of on people that are in recovery and family members. And when we first started, I had no idea, you know, and then I found out that a lot of family members and friends who have people in active addiction are like, "What can I do? What can I say?" And we kind of break it down like that from time to time too, and just be like, "Hey, you know, like, send them to Australia, send them to New Zealand. I know a guy."
Yeah.
"Can you work on websites? Because this guy," we'll send them to you, man.
The frustrating thing about that is I've got a guy that works on a website who I know will see it to the end, but we just can't even get into what's already been done. That's how annoying that is.
So like passwords and stuff or whatever, you're just like, how do I
think he built it on his local. Anyway, if anyone knows how to use Oxygen, let me know. But I don't even think that they can help even if they do. Yeah, anyway, give up. I've given up on that one. Surrender the outcome.
Yeah, you know, move different directions, I guess. But I appreciate you being on, James. I really do. I know this is kind of last minute, even though I kind of talked about it a week ago or whatever, and it was just like, hey. And I know you were really busy today, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast. And, you know, whenever you want to put the video together, just let me know. I can share it out there, and, you know, don't rush it. If you find something good to use out of it, you know, feel free.
My mum always said, if you want something done, give it to someone busy because they'll do it. Don't give it to someone who's got too much time on their hands because they don't do things. And it's true. I
remember that one. Yeah, because they're busy. You know, they're usually putting stuff together and they're going with the flow. Where I might steal that.
Done. Yeah, I'm
gonna put that on a T-shirt. But James Deere, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Break the Chain. Like I said, we'll put a link up 217recovery.com and on the 217 Recovery app, which you can get from the Apple Store and the Google Play Store.
Thanks, mate. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the 217 Recovery Podcast. Listen on the 217 Recovery app. Download the app and rate us in your app store.